On August 11, 1934, the first federal prisoners arrived at Alcatraz. The island had already been a fort and a military prison, but this was a new federal experiment. In the middle of San Francisco Bay, officials wanted a place that could hold prisoners considered too disruptive, famous, violent, or escape-minded for ordinary institutions. The timing mattered. Depression-era America was reading about gangsters, kidnappings, bank robberies, and prison breaks. The cause behind Alcatraz was not one crime wave alone. It was the political need to make federal authority look harder than the men whose names filled the papers. That is why the island's geography became part of the sentence. San Francisco was close enough to see across the bay, but the cold water, tides, rocks, fog, and distance made freedom feel cruelly out of reach. Arrival itself became a ritual. Prisoners came by boat, moved up from the dock, entered the cell house, and became numbers inside a controlled federal machine. The message was simple: reputation did not matter here. A famous name, a criminal legend, or a record of defiance would be reduced to a cell, a schedule, and a count. Alcatraz also carried an older record of confinement. Military prisoners, barracks, gun positions, hospital spaces, docks, and island roads had already made the place a controlled world before the Bureau of Prisons took over. Federal officials did not build punishment from nothing. They inherited an island already shaped by defense and discipline, then gave it a new purpose. The historical context matters because the prison was a conversion. Military architecture and bay geography were reorganized around modern federal incarceration. Life inside Alcatraz was not only about walls, it was about rules. Speech, mail, visits, meals, work, recreation, medical care, punishment, and movement all passed through discipline. The cell house tiers, narrow corridors, mess hall, workshops, yard, guard towers, and punishment cells turned policy into daily experience. The reasoning was practical and symbolic at once. Officials believed routine would weaken prison gangs, remove publicity, and stop men from building power inside the institution. Control had to be visible, repeated, and recorded. Well-known inmates made the symbol larger. Al Capone, George Machine Gun Kelly, Robert Stroud, and other headline prisoners helped create the myth of the Rock, but the myth can hide the ordinary human record. Most of Alcatraz was repetition: doors closing, footsteps echoing, officers counting, prisoners working in laundries and shops, men eating under watch, and families reduced to controlled letters or rare visits. The prison wanted to erase personality, yet public attention kept turning certain prisoners into characters in a national drama. The prison's reputation depended on the idea that escape was impossible, yet that idea also invited testing. Men studied fog, currents, blind spots, tools, timing, and the route from cell house to water. Some attempts ended quickly. Others became part of the legend, especially the 1962 escape by Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers. Whether or not they survived, the attempt proved that Alcatraz could not remain only an image of perfect control. Its own mythology had become something prisoners tried to defeat. By the early 1960s, Alcatraz was expensive, deteriorating, and less practical than newer federal facilities. Salt air damaged buildings, water and supplies had to be moved by boat, and the old island system cost too much for what it provided. It closed in 1963, but it did not disappear. The island later became part of a national park and a place where visitors walked through the dock, cell house, yard, and corridors that once separated men from the world outside. Alcatraz matters because it turns an argument about crime and punishment into a landscape. It shows how a nation can build fear into architecture, routine, reputation, and memory. The federal penitentiary began as a promise that the hardest prisoners could be isolated and controlled. Its afterlife asks a different question. What does a society choose to remember when a prison becomes a historic site, a tourist destination, and a myth people still recognize at a glance?